Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. Today we're going to talk about the Ferrari California. This is not a new car. This car's been in the game for quite some time. It is a Tier 3 car, and many older players may even have it maxed out at this point, but some of the newer players might not have seen this car very much. Since there's so many cars now to pull from keys, you don't always see the Ferrari California as one of the cars that comes out of silver keys as much as it used to, especially because it's a four-star car and a little bit more rare than some of the others. The Ferrari California is not a bad car. We're going to go through the stage 6 effects of this car with this video, as well as discuss a little bit about the typical challenges you'll face as part of the Prestige Cup. This being the Prestige Cup car for this season, let's take a look at this car and what it can do with stage 6 effects. So here we have the stage 5 setup for the California. I'm just going to jump in here and take a look at this and show you that all parts are currently set at stage 5. Let's go back and take a look at where this car's at just stage 5 only. The California is an interesting car. It has a very high grip, uh, even with just stock tires. So the general tune for this car seems to be 5.0 final drive. You almost never have to move this from this spot once you have the car built. The nitrous depends on whether you have stage 5 or 6. Obviously, if you have stage 6, it'll be a little bit shorter on this end, but actually longer duration and more power. What's most interesting about this car is the tire setting. Unlike most cars, the California can actually be set at anywhere past 53 to 55 on, but you may actually get the best performance out of it at 100/0. Unusual to say the least, and it's one of the points about this car that carries through all the way until it gets to full stage 6 and fully maxed. So the dyno's not bad considering it's stage 5 only. We are already looking at 9.197. The car generally also beats dyno slightly and allows us to actually try to get under that by a little bit. It again depends on how well you can drive it, of course, but for the most part, if you launch perfectly and catch the shifts, you should be able to get a pretty decent run out of this car. I use nitrous in second, shift near perfect at the end, and let the car kind of run its course through. It should do the uh, speed, the mile per hour, approximately where it dynos, although I did a little bit slower than I had hoped. And here, 9.189 is also not as good as I had hoped, but it is slightly under the quarter mile time. You can probably get it more, a little bit more under the just with a little bit of better driving technique, but that's where it's at with this car as stage 5 only. So you're already looking at a pretty fast tier 3 car just with stage 5, and know that fully maxed the car does about an 8.177 in the hands of expert drivers. Um, that being, I believe, one of the world record runs. Generally, I'm sorry, 8.277, I believe might be closer to the world record number. And 8.3s are what most people are going to be running. It is basically less than a second off from its fastest possible time. So that means the stage sixes individually will not have a huge margin from the 9.197 dyno that we already have at stage 5. So let's start looking at the stage 6 effects with this car. We're going to start off with body. Body being one of the stage 6s that is generally useful, but not always with tier 3 cars. Here we have body installed, and we're going to take a look at it with the tune. Notice the computer is not even calling for a tune change. You basically threw the part on, you leave these, and that's it. And here the dyno says 9.084. Knowing what this car can generally do, you should be able to get it into the 9.04s or maybe even possibly a 9 flat, depending on how well you could drive it. Again, I'll test drive it for this stage 6, but I may skip driving it for the next few just so we can move this along. But generally speaking, since you're leaving the grip where it is and everything else pretty much where it is, driving it will make all the difference of whether you get all the way through or you don't. So here we go. Let's see what we got. Looks like I came a little bit under dyno, just like I did with the stage 5, 9.040. Not a substantial number, but again, slightly beating dyno, which is still a good thing with any car that you can get. So that there gives us a about little bit less than I would say 0.15 drop from the stock dyno, which is not bad at all. The next one on the list would be stage 6 tire. So here I have stage 6 tire installed. Knowing how much grip the car already has without even getting into stage 6 tire, we're already looking at 100 0. I am not too positive that tire is going to do anything. If it doesn't really look like it does much. It's almost the same dyno as when you had stock, stage 5 stuff. So tire definitely is one of the more useless stage 6s in the series. I'm not going to waste my time trying to drive it. I assume I'm going to get a little bit under dyno, but let's leave it alone and move on to the next. Next on the list, we would have stage 6 transmission. Transmission being one of the ones that runs 3 fusions and with a decent jump in both PP and Evo should be a decent stage 6. Let's go into test and tune and verify whether it's any good. Again, no change in the tune. I'm just leaving it where it is. 8.990. That is a substantial drop greater than body and certainly placing transmission currently at the top. This deserves a quick run just to see where transmission ultimately lands. Again, as long as I drive it well, I should be able to get a decent run out of it. Now I'm trying to cut it as close to perfect as possible without actually redlining it. And that number looks pretty good. Let's see if it came well under. Nah, not by much. It looked better on the corner when I was running through the traps than it actually did. Again, very slightly under the dyno. Um, kind of like the theme it is so far with this car as far as driving it. But transmission right now, definitely one of the top stage 6s to get. Hopefully, we'll see one of the other ones topple it from its throne as we go along. Now, with trans being on top, we move on to the next one, which is engine. Engine being a decent power, adding stage 6 with 4 fusions and a decent jump in Evo and PP point could also turn out to be a rather decent stage 6. Not holding my breath that it's going to necessarily take down trans, but it should be up there with performance. And it definitely doesn't disappoint. I believe this is slightly better than even body, which was a second before. So that puts trans in, I mean, not trans, but engine in a pretty good spot. I don't think I'm going to run it since we know it probably will just run slightly under dyno. Let's move on and take a look at turbo from here. And turbo, being the next stage 6 in the list, generally falls to the lower end of performance. Turbo and intake usually doesn't perform very well on any car, although there are a few exceptions, as we've seen from past videos. Let's see how turbo performs here. Again, this car basically has one tune. Once you leave it, you're basically done. You don't need to replay with it too much. It's definitely slower, better than tire, but worse than all the others we've seen so far. Placing turbo currently at the slower end of the stage sixes. Again, it probably will still allow you to beat it slightly in actual driving, but not that impressive. Also, again, the mile per hour so far has all been pretty close to 160 or below. I'm sure with combinations we can get above it, but so far turbo is not a very strong performer. So let's move on and take a look at intake from here. And here we have intake. Let's take a look at intake being installed here. The points here again didn't move much, so intake as compared to turbo probably isn't that strong. Now, interestingly, intake usually isn't that strong in real life either. I'm always amused by kids who put an intake on their car and expect it all of a sudden to have a completely different feel. Let's be honest here. An intake filter isn't going to do much in a real car either, so it not doing much in the video game doesn't really uh, raise too much objections from me. And here we can see intake does drop time by a few hundredths from stage 5 only, but certainly it's definitely on the slow side, second only to good old tire, which for this car apparently does nothing, or next to nothing, I should say. So intake, second to the bottom, not a surprise. Uh, not a great stage 6. So if you pull tire and intake as your only two stage 6, you may have some problems getting through this event later on when the PC Cup starts. And here we come to the final stage 6 in the list. That is nitrous. We started at body, we end up at nitrous. Now, nitrous, generally speaking, for tier 3s, have always performed very well. It's a strong stage 6 for most tier 3 cars and tier 2 cars, and are generally also it's generally needed for speed traps. So here you will have to tune because you're going to lower it to 5.6 to get some of the best possible performance out of the car. Nothing else changes. And let's take a look at the dyno. Is it going to dethrone trans? Yes, it does. At least according to Dyno, I am sure a test run would only confirm that it comes in a little bit faster because that longer duration and more powerful nitrous should push the car into a higher performance envelope. Although Dyno wise, it's only about hundreds better than transmission, so it's not a substantial difference, but it does put nitrous into the first spot. Anxiously, oh, 8.858. Yes, 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 yes. Not only is it the best, it also beats Dino by more once you have nitrous in. That's kind of important. Not only that, 161 mile per hour is also one of the higher speed traps. So nitrous is going to be an important stage 6 for the Prestige Cup. There's no doubt about it. It's number one. Nitrous and trans in combination should do a lot. Nitrous trans engine may be enough to get you through the entire cup because there really isn't that much of a difference between 8.2, 8.3, and 9.17. So I don't think Natural Motion is going to put the PC Cup at anything quicker than, say, an 8.5. Otherwise, it'll be making it a little too difficult for people. And that brings us now to combinations. So, as I mentioned when we were looking at nitrous, I think nitrous and trans being the two strongest could produce a very strong combination result where you could drop substantial amount of time with just two stage 6s. Is it enough to drop us into the low 8.5s? No. But the dyno will get us to like the 8.7 range, 786. This could very well end up being the PC Cup time or being very close to it, mainly because recently the PC Cups have all been a little bit easier, and I just don't see Natural Motion making this at like an 8.4, 8.3, because the best the car's going to dyno with full stage 6 is about an 8.4. So an 8.7 is really not that far off from fully maxed dyno wise. It wouldn't really be fair for a PC Cup to require as much performance as you would normally see out of an Evolution Cup or a Golden Cup for that matter. So this one, um, if we follow some of the recent experiences with PC Cup cars, we may even be able to get through the entire Cup with one stage 6, the right one, the biggest one, which is Nitrous. If you're running 8.7, I mean not 8.7, but 8.8s, and we happen to get that 8.8 time, you probably will beat the Cup. And not only that, with just two, you're looking at 8.64 on a run under dyno, pretty fast. These two should definitely get you through the PC Cup. And if it doesn't, then I think Natural Motion really went too tough on this PC Cup in that case. So that is just with two stage sixes, and those are the two strongest. And as you can see, it really should be enough to get you through the cup. Well, we just looked at the best case scenario for a quick combo. What about the worst case scenario? What if we got the three worst ones? Tire, turbo, and intake, and just couldn't pull any other stage 6. The game keeps giving us duplicates. What now? Well, let's see what it puts us at performance-wise first. First of all, you're losing performance from Nitrous, so it's going to be a little bit short here on the numbers just from that. And with all three of them, you can't get under 9.0. That is a big problem. This is the reverse situation of Nitrous and Trans. With three of the weakest stage sixes, you can't even get under 9. And while I'm pretty optimistic that we're not going to look at an 8.5 PC Cup, I'm really pretty sure also that Natural Motion is going to make it at least 8.9. I mean, it's the stage 5 runs 9.17. The PC Cup is going to be at least 8.9 or a little bit around there on a generous side. So a 9.0 is still a problem. You're not going to get through with a 9.0, but maybe the car will run 8.8s. Who knows, right? Maybe it can get under dyno, but without Nitrous Stage 6, my suspicion is it won't be that easy. Let's take a look. Again, I'm trying to drive the best I can, and I'm not the best with this car. Um, there might be a different shift pattern out there that'll make it run better, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed here that I'm into the high 8.9s, 8.994 on that run. But is that enough? What if the final time is 8.8? We're not going to make it. So note that this combination, which is the weakest of the three combination, may actually get you stuck. You better hope that you do get either one of the stronger ones of some sort in combination with the rest, and you don't end up with this specific combination. If you do end up with a specific combination, you're going to have to pull some bronze keys and hope that you pull at least an engine, trans, body, or nitrous. All right, so we talked about the combinations. What about speed trap? Speed trap is definitely one of those things that many people run into problem with depending on the car. Now, for Tempest 3 Tier 3, the fastest speed you need to hit is 160. And with this car, as you have seen from just the dynos, 160 is probably doable with just one stage 6. Here we have all these stage 6s and just no nitrous because I wanted to see what it can do without nitrous. Can we hit 165, 166, or maybe even higher mile per hour with some fine tuning? That's a key question here because if we have to hit 166 for whatever reason, is it possible? One, I don't think the speed trap is going to be this high. I suspect the highest speed trap you may run into this time around should be somewhere near 160, simply because the car can do it. I don't think Natural Motion is going to make us do 160 plus because that would be kind of hard for most of the setups unless you have more of the stage sixes. The difference between 5.0 and 4.8 is where that extra mile per hour can come in. If you keep going down, it actually loses mile per hour. So right around 4.0 4.85, 4.83, 82, I guess. Let me put 82, 83. That tend to get you right near where the best mile per hour is going to be. I had 166 here before. Let me see what happened to it. Oh, looks like it might be this way. Ooh, 165, 165. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, there it is. So 4.87 got me 166 theoretically. Now let's run it and see if we can get it. Obviously, I'm going to run nitrous really late because you want it to be pushing near the end. So unlike a normal drive, I'm not going to hit it in second gear. I'll probably end up hitting it somewhere in fourth gear. Okay, so three, four, actually fifth gear is fine because we want the car to push all the way through the final speed. Yep, right there. Now it hit red line, so it bounced a little bit back to 165.9. I can actually lower the final drive slightly, run nitrous late, and get 166 plus. So there's your speed trap technique. What about this? What about sprints? What if we had to do a fast sprint? Can the car do a fast sprint utilizing the typical strategy, which is tons of grip? It's already using 5.0, and this way doesn't look good, right? It actually got slower that way. So this is one of those situations with this car where it needs to have less grip to do a faster 0 to 60. That's interesting. So we can put it somewhere here and get the theoretical lower time. The other thing is you want to then test the possibility that first gear or second gear being at that spot for 60 mile per hour will influence the effects. So here we're going to be able to top out right in second gear at the 60 mile mark and fourth gear for the 100 mile per hour mark. It doesn't look like tweaking that's going to make it much better than that. However, um, using nitrous and launching it, let's see if we can get under the 3.6. So sprint may actually be more of a difficult target to hit than top speed with this car. Let's see if I can get something decent out of it. And that's probably the best I'm going to do for my end with this sprint. Let's see what we got. It did get under the target numbers by at least according to Dyno, but that's a pretty rough and relatively slow time. Now, if you look at Tempest 3, the final 0 to 100 time and the fastest one in Tempest 3 was a 4.456. So the good news is if you have a pretty much fully maxed car, you won't have a problem beating Tempest 3 target times. The hope is that, of course, the Prestige Cup target times would only be easier and not harder. So here, without going into further detail, what I can tell you is the California could, in fact, be used for Tempest 3 and beat the target numbers. And in addition, I don't think we should have a problem with the Prestige Cup, although sprints, it is weaker than speed traps. This car is better at speed traps than it is at sprints. So that brings us to the final thoughts on the Ferrari California. One is that this used to be one of the fastest car in Tier 3. It was never king of the throne for very often or very long, but it is definitely one of the faster cars. It is a good car for Tempest 3, and generally speaking, it should be a relatively easy car to use for the Prestige Cup. So I think overall, it's not a bad car for Tier 3, and with some adjustments, it can also be used relatively effectively for some of the map events. Is it worth definitely to spend all your resources to max out? Probably not. I think build it enough to get through the cup and put it aside for now. There are other tier 3 cars coming up as PC Cup car, particularly the Cayman VCS Warsteiner. That one is the fastest tier 3 and probably would be more worth it to build than this car all the way to the max. If you're going to be splitting your resources, save it for the Porsche. That being said, I still like this car, and this car has some cool features, such as you could put the top up. Look at that. That is very cool. One of the few cars that have the graphics to allow the top to come up like that, and the windows come up, and now you have your top up, and the trunk is empty. Now you can reverse the process, watch the windows roll down. Let me put the trunk down first. You can reverse the process, watch the windows roll down. Look at that. And boom, hard top operation. You get to watch the whole thing. I love it. I don't think any, or maybe one or two other cars in the game has the graphics and the motion for this. I believe one of the McLarens has it too. But very cool trick. One of the things that you can enjoy when you're just looking at this car in the garage. Never get tired of seeing that top go up and down. It's a very cool thing. All right. Well, that being said, we're at the end of this video. Please feel free to comment. Let me know what you think. If you have questions, comments, or thoughts, please put them in the discussion below the video. And please subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications of my videos when they come on. I always strive to do stage 6 effects. Most of the PC cars that I have built, and some other cars like Golden and Evolution Cup as well. So if you like that kind of information and you want to be notified, please subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching my videos. I'll catch you next time.